We're here to look at this extraordinary film made in the early 70s, Zio Tom, Uncle Tom, Goodbye Uncle Tom in fact, made by two outrageous Italians.
One of a few attempts to show slavery and the slave trade that hurts. So you watch it and you're either appalled or you're revolted or you're shocked.
It's been banned for like 35 years. Because of the subject matter, because of the content, and because of how it made people feel, and because it actually dealt with the realities of slavery as opposed to the kind of glossy coverings we tend to get.
Today when we look at it, what we see is that it was almost certainly disappeared because the critics were part of a culture that's hugely in denial about the horrors of the slavery episode, which is what this spoof historical documentary sets up effectively.
The stars must fade away.
This is a disturbing film in terms of the way it handles its content, but it's also a challenging film as cinema.
The two Italian directors of this film made. They started in the early 60s with a film called Mondo, which was a shock documentary film, completely unlike what we thought of as documentary in this country at that time. For lots of reasons, which I'll go into afterwards. They made a second film about Africa, which was just as controversial as the one you're going to watch this afternoon. So this film, Goodbye Uncle Tom, looks at the viciousness of the American slave trade.
Water kills her, please, lies. And you're right.
The moral ambiguity that these Mondo documentaries have always had is inherent in this. It's something we can only decide once we've watched the film and discussed it. I'll leave you to decide whether it's the film that's bad or whether it's us that's bad.
Here on page 122. It is obligatory that all new arrivals shall be given their first collective bath in water containing ashes, sand, and Lysol.
No chicken bones, I beg of you. Why, I've had to take 2 of them.
They did something which a number of people who spoke before and about slavery as an institution hadn't done. They went to the diaries, the records. I mean, you know, so they're right. Everything in there is true. Everything in there. I've seen records attesting to this. So nothing's been made up. And the question then is, when everything they're showing is true, what does it then say about the institution?
All wenches with pups, step forward. Give me that bag of bones. Let's go.
That troubled me, not just because I know it happened, but because it did happen to make that film. Okay, there was an abuse of human labour to make this film. I think we have to be clear about that.
You heard me. Give that here. Damn you, brother. Come here. I'll teach you to jump when your master speaks.
What I found very interesting about it was, you know, how you could really see the disabling effects of slavery, you know, the brutality, because we all know that we were bought and sold, but what sometimes we really do forget when we are discussing it is the fact of, the psychological brutality, not only the physical brutality, but the psychological brutality, which it really, is, resonates today. I mean, in so many things that we see in ourselves, and when we can't explain our behaviors and sometimes the things that we do, we can have a look at this and see, well, maybe it does stem from, that dehumanization.
I can't imagine, though, to be quite honest, that those guys, those white guys, Italians, made this stuff and weren't doing what you were saying, weren't aware of the fact that there was something absolutely obscenely outrageous and pathetic and whatever else it is, and disturbing about whiteness that is exposed by the fact that it comes off this thing.
They are reflections of what happened. It's a minuscule reflection because obviously what we saw there has got to be magnified by millions of people.
What struck me was the silence, and then right at the end, the Nat Turner section, where it's like, at last we get a voice.
I take my hat off to the two Italian gentlemen who made that so we could see it and see the reality.
It's this audience that saw it today, who were some of them fiercely against it, some of them fiercely for it, yes, but all engaged with what it was raising. That's the audience that this film was made for.
As far as impact, it's about 10 out of 10 because you could just tell from the amount of discussion. This is what, 7 o'clock, we're still here chatting about it, because upstairs, right, there's a whole bunch of people, there's about at least 50 or 60 people still talking. The film started at 2 o'clock, and at 2 o'clock we had 450 people in the venue. They stuck around until 6 o'clock when we had between 4 and 6 we had a 2-hour discussion, and there's still 50 or 60 people upstairs talking about it right now. So that shows you how much impact it had, and it shows you how much people need to talk or discuss or do something about the issues raised in the film and how those issues relate to present day situation.